everybody. Welcome back to the Amon Mission podcast. I'm your host today, of course, Dean, and back again with my favorite friend, Joshua Montero with me.
What's up?
Yeah. Yeah, so today, it's been a while since we've talked on the podcast since last time. We just uploaded the video though, so it probably seems like a little bit shorter of a time than since we've actually talked. But to start off, we'd like to start with things a little bit of basketball. And so with playoffs around the corner, obviously the play-ins are about to happen, basically the end of the season besides playoffs. How do you think, I guess, the playoff is shaping up, Josh?
Yeah, it's been a season. It's been a weird one. I haven't been as tuned in with the NBA as I usually am. I usually like to watch the football season completely until February, and then after the All-Star game, I really start to get into the NBA playoffs, or the NBA teams that they're fighting for seedings into the playoffs, because those kind of high leverage games matter in that situation. I think the play-in's been a great addition. I know I've been surprised keeping tabs on the Hawks and Heat game right now. The Hawks are up by like 15, and at one point they were up by 20. And I thought the Heat were going to win because they had the more talented team. So that's definitely been surprising me. Obviously, a little bit disappointed on the Timberwolves as a squad, how they kind of self-destructed literally just the days before they're about to play tonight. Now, I don't know if you saw the Rudy Gobert punch.
Oh,
And
yeah, I
Jaden
saw that.
McDaniels. Yeah, that's insane. I'm like, he reached over the coach to punch the guy. Who was it? Kyle Anderson. And I'm just like, how are you gonna do that in front of your coach, man? In front of thousands of people. Like, I understand, like practice, that sort of frustrations happen, but you gotta be mindful where you are in the public eye. One, but also you can't just do something like that to your own teammate. You gotta think through things once in a while and figure out the best way to handle it. So I've been disappointed in that, and then Jaden McDaniels breaking his hand because he felt like he needed to express his feelings to the wall. So that part's been a little bit of a disappointment. And I don't see how they're going to beat the Lakers tonight at all, because the Lakers seem like they're rounding in the form now that LeBron has got a couple games under his belt. Anthony Davis seems like he's firing on all cylinders. Their team seems to have full cohesive unit. So I predicted the Heat were going to advance. I predict the Lakers are going to advance. Obviously, it's going to be weird to see how the Bulls and Raptors situation plays off. My heart says the Bulls, but we'll see what happens. Then the other play-in tournament. Who else is playing? If I know off the top of my head, let me take a look.
Yeah. See, yeah. So Atlanta, Toronto, and Chicago are part like the play-in squad, and then obviously Lakers, Timberwolves.
Oh,
Pelicans,
yeah,
and
we're talking about the
Oklahoma
Hawks and the
City.
Heat. I'm thinking of the Western Conference. Yeah, the Western Conference. Yeah, I haven't dialed into that in a while, but let's see here. Thunders and Pelicans. Oh, that should be an interesting series. Because they're both two young teams. I think the Pelicans without Zion is going to be a little bit difficult to get the damage. They're really good. They're a really good team that's deep. With Brandon Ingram, obviously, and then CJ McCollum. So they have a couple pieces there, but I think the Thunder, even though they're younger, they have a lot more offensive pieces to light up the scoreboard, and I don't think the Pelicans are going to keep up with that. So I'll take the Thunder on that one. But those are my play-in predictions.
Yeah, and overall, obviously, I'm not as deeply invested into basketball as you are, but kind of like a similar viewpoints. But kind of just looking as the playoffs as a whole, I do think that, like, I mean, Milwaukee Bucks are obviously one of the scarier teams to be going up against, but also was it the Phoenix Suns as well, especially just with the run that they've been having and how scary of a team they've looked like since KD's been there. And obviously when KD's healthy, his team just plays a lot better. So
he's one of the best players. He's one of the best players in the league. They've been undefeated since he's joined that squad.
Yeah.
So they are going to go deep in the playoffs, in my opinion. We'll see about the first round matchup, but that was actually what I was going to say next. I think they have an opportunity to unseat the Clippers. I think the Clippers are being underrated right now, but the one thing they do not have going for them is Paul George is returning from injury.
Mhm.
And I think people don't understand that even if Paul George is going to be able to play in the series, whether that's game 5, 6, or 7, he's not going to hit the ground running. Like
Mhm.
I'm making just a prediction here. He's just um, it's going to take him 1 or 2 games to get his rhythm back. So the Clippers are going to have to steal 1 or 2 on the road to even have a chance on that in that series against the Suns. Kawhi's an amazing defensive player. Like he will hold his own on one of their scores on the Suns, whether it's Devin Booker or Kevin Durant. But I don't think the Clippers have enough.
Mhm.
But yes, I totally feel you on that. Milwaukee's definitely to be scary. The other team I would not count out is the defending Eastern Conference champions, the Celtics. I think people have been writing them off a little bit. I would not. They were the team that dismantled the Bucks in the middle of the season by at least like they won by at least 40 the last time they met. And I think they're ready for another finals run. And with Golden State not looking the same on the road, I don't think there's any team stopping the Celtics.
Mhm. Yeah.
We'll see with the Suns and the Nuggets, but I think it's the Celtics to lose this one. I really
Mhm.
believe that.
Yeah, but I do think, or I personally really like just the playoff lineup that we have kind of incoming for this upcoming playoff season in the NBA. I feel like obviously there are stronger and weaker teams, but overall it does feel like there's a lot of kind of just balance and more even, I guess, playing fields that you kind of see with strengths and weaknesses of each of the teams. Obviously, minus some of the obvious powerhouses that you see in the playoffs. But overall, I think it'll be a really enjoyable playoff. Yeah, just playoffs for the NBA.
Yeah, just to expound on that point, it's been weird for me because I haven't been keeping tabs on the Western Conference as well. If you could already tell by me
Yeah.
forgetting that the Thunder and the Pelicans are playing in the play-in tomorrow. Yeah, but I think the play-in's been a mix of like teams that have disappointed and then teams that are on the rise. And the Thunder and the Pelicans are those 2 teams that are on the rise. But I've been a little bit disappointed in the Heat, the Bulls, and the Hawks to a certain extent because they all made moves to like try and advance where they finished in the playoffs last year. And I think to see them in the play-in isn't exactly a bright look for those teams' outlook. But with the Western Conference in particular, I almost feel like the rankings don't really matter when I'm considering who the best teams are
Hmm.
because it's it's like the Kings who have the best offensive record. Sorry, not best offensive record, the best offensive rating throughout this entire season. They're going against a team that's notorious for having like offensive superpowers with Stephen Curry, and then Klay Thompson, then Jordan Poole having another season under his belt after they won the NBA Finals. So that series is going to be a shootout,
Hmm.
and I don't know what that's going to look like, but I know the Warriors are not a team to count out, and they're the 6th seed. So, and you imagine the Lakers are in the play-in right now. Whatever seed they end up, they're gonna end up facing the Memphis Grizzlies, the 2nd seed. But it's LeBron James and Anthony Davis
Hmm.
as a 7th seed.
Hmm.
So I almost feel like you just have to look at the teams and see like, okay, how have they been playing lately? Where's the talent level on their roster? And then make your predictions from there.
Hmm. Yeah, and so obviously I'm excited to watch some NBA playoffs, but the MLB just recently started, and obviously season still has a long ways to go. But have any teams kind of surprised you? Kind of, I don't know, been different off script, you know?
I'm There are 2 teams that surprised me. One's pretty obvious. I think everybody's talking about the Rays. The Rays are 10-0. They're leading the Boston Red Sox right now as we speak. They beat the Boston Red Sox yesterday. So I think they're the unstoppable team. I know, I know everybody's talking about like what are the Yankees and the Mets doing, like ESPN talk shows. But it's the Rays that have stood out as the clear and cut favorite above the all the other baseball teams. But one thing that's really interesting is I was checking the standings and looking into the past couple of games. The Arizona Diamondbacks are ahead in the
Mhm.
standings over both the Dodgers and the Padres right now. That is absolutely wild to me. I mean, granted, okay, it's like 11 to 12 games into the season, right? But I just look, they're facing the Brewers, who are also doing really well um, on this current stretch. Yesterday, one of their pitchers, Gallen, who had a rough start to the opening day series um, himself um, for the Diamondbacks. He pitched so well that he struck out 11 batters. And it's not their offense that is really the reason why they're winning so much. It's old school. It's the base running. It's the athleticism on display to field the grounders and out alike. And it's the stealing. They're willing to run extra bases on their hit for doubles and singles because they believe they have the athleticism to score. And they're taking that chance and it's paying off for them. You got to give them credit.
Mhm. Yeah, like you said, obviously the Tampa Bay is just on their incredible run right now. It's pretty crazy. Like you know, everybody's talking about it. But I also look a little bit at the Angels. Obviously, I like a couple of the players there. And you know, they're playing to the status quo right now. You know, just they got good players, but they also don't have good players, and they just kind of stick around 500. Do a little bit worse, maybe sometimes do a little bit better, but you know, I guess we'll see. But
They're a
yeah.
team that's always disappointed me because how do you have two of the best batters in MLB history on the same team going at the same time and you're not able to get above 500? It shows there's a lot more that goes into baseball than just like hitting. But for whatever reason, the Angels haven't put it together fully. I'll be interested to see. I can look into this and do some and dive deep into like where their roster is, like what are they doing well, what are they not. But just seeing their record right now, I'm pretty disappointed in them as well.
Yeah, and obviously there's all the talks about Shohei just leaving next season. Obviously, you know, he's on that 1 year contract, I think, right?
I don't blame him.
Um, yeah, I mean, if he wants to win, it's probably the best option for him. So, um, obviously it's kind of cool to stay at a place where you won MVP, but um, you know, there's so many other teams that are willing to pay him and are on that winning trajectory that can work together with him to kind of just be an unstoppable force, basically. Mhm. Yeah. Do you have any other thoughts on just kind of the MLB or anything? If not, it's all good.
No. As a White Sox fan, it's pretty disappointing. It's kind of you're riding that roller coaster where we're getting some quality wins, but then we're losing a couple we shouldn't. So we're kind of on that 500 slope again. I think we're 5-6 or 6-5 right now,
Yeah.
and it's just kind of like, okay, you really need to start putting some wins together. But at the same time, baseball is one of those sports where there's a lot of games that are played, and it matters like when you are hot at the end of the season and how that translates to the playoff series. So it is still early. For all I know, like the Diamondbacks can just like scale back and not be as productive as they were, but they look like one of the more impressive teams right now in MLB.
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah, just kind of moving on to the next topic now. You know, Tiger Woods, legendary player. Everybody knows who he is. At least, yeah, most people do, I think. But yeah, there's kind of just a lot of discussion right now about whether or not Tiger Woods can win another major. And um, so again, Josh, do you have any input on that right now?
Yeah, sorry, just had to cry a little bit, but yeah, I'm doing okay. Middle of the allergy season, but I think it's a little bit sad to see what Tiger Woods is going through right now. Um, I think it's one of I don't want to speculate, um, but it was not a good look to see him limping on the golf course, just like trying to get through it. I'm happy that he dropped out for his own health and his situation, but I think one thing to keep in mind is the car crash for Tiger Woods happened February 23rd of last year, 2022. And this was a full scale injury he suffered in the lower extremity, right?
Mhm.
So you don't want to compare this to an ACL tear, but players like football players and basketball players who suffer an ACL tear, they normally don't get their full range of motion back for a year and a half at least. So I'm talking about like full like acceleration just to get to like 80% of what they once were. And to have that expectation of Tiger Woods in a more like static movement sport as golf for like I'm talking about for the lower extremities, I think it's still unreasonable because you could see some of the putts and some of the chip shots he had, they were not accurate, but we know Tiger Woods is better than that. I think it has to do with a situation with balance. Like he doesn't have the full balance yet where he trusts the
Mhm.
weight on his leg. So I think personally, I think he needs to take some time away from the sport
Mhm.
in order to compete again to win another major. I'm not
Mhm.
saying he can't win another major. I think he just needs time right now to rest, get that motion back, feel confident in the balance, and then try and take another crack at it. I think
Mhm.
he could still win another major, but I think the state that he is right now, he's only doing more harm to himself than good.
Yeah. Yeah, and just the tricky thing with him is obviously he is getting older, and obviously every year young superstars in golf enter the enter these tournaments, and just they look up to him as an idol, and they've kind of followed all his training regimens, all his kind of mental mind hacks that he's done to kind of get where he has for the entirety of his career. And so I do think he still has the winner's mentality. He knows all the training things that he needs to do to be winning these. It just the competition is there. He's getting older and everything. And so while I do think that rest probably is best for him, especially if he wants to win, it's always scary to wonder like when does your health give out with age, with sports and everything. And so it'll be interesting to see kind of how the next couple years go for him.
That's valid, but I think one thing to keep in mind is he's finished a course, or I believe finished a course or finished a hole on a fractured leg before. He's done that. That's the Tiger Woods we're talking about, man.
Yeah.
Like he is as tough as nails. So for anyone thinking that like, oh, he should have finished it or he shouldn't have dropped out, like, who are you to say that, man? These are professional golfers out there, but at the same time, they have to keep their health in check.
Mhm.
So I think it's just a situation that's worth monitoring in time. But I think I think Tiger Woods still has it.
Mhm.
It's just a situation where he needs to make sure he's healthy so he can compete and not rush it just for the sake of the fans gig like seeing him out there at Augusta once again. He can always come back to Augusta. Look at Phil Mickelson. I think it's 52 or 53 right now. He's still competing at a high level. So Tiger Woods still has time to do it. I just think he needs to be patient in the healing process, and I think he has the shot.
Mhm. Yeah. So obviously, best of luck to Tiger Woods. Hopefully, he obviously knows himself the best, like you were kind of saying, and up to him to probably do his best, to win and do everything. But gonna switch gears a little bit now, kind of talk more about just the NFL, some news that we forgot to talk about, some upcoming stuff that we are excited about. So yeah, to start off, obviously, when we're talking about all that free agency stuff, we did miss the Brandin Cooks trade. Um, a lot of stuff happening with that in the NFL. So do you have kind of opinions on how that changes the NFL landscape, his landscape for his new team, his former team and everything?
Yeah, my bad on that, guys. Last episode I got too caught up with the DJ Moore news and him getting traded that I completely overlooked that Brandon Cooks got traded from the Texans to the Cowboys. I think this is a good move for Dak Prescott. It just makes it easier for him. I talked a lot about spacing in the last episode, um, and this is no different. It's going to help him with that. But I think people forget that everywhere Brandon Cooks has gone to, he's been 1,000-yard receiver. So I don't see how that changes on the Cowboys because Dak Prescott has supported Amari Cooper and CD Lamb before being 1,000-yard receivers. So I think this is no different. The offensive production is going to be there for that Cowboys offense. I think for this team, it's going to be more of now that Zeke is gone and you're shifting gears to Tony Pollard, who's coming off a major injury, by the way, and you want to focus your attention on the running game. How is the passing and the running game going to marry, especially when Kellen Moore is gone?
Mm-hmm.
So I think I like Rico Dowdle a lot on that team as a backup running back. I think he didn't get the opportunities because obviously Zeke and Pollard are really good running
Mhm.
backs. But I would look for them to add another running back to help with that balance, especially because when you're considering that Tony Pollard's coming back from injury, you don't know what's going to happen
Mhm.
when he comes back. So we'll see what moves they make. I think that's a good fit for the offense. Yeah.
Yeah, and I basically agree with like almost everything that you said. Brandin Cooks is a phenomenal receiver. Feel like he gets swept under the rug a lot of times just because, I mean, he does put good numbers up, but there's the receivers that are the superstar kind of household names. You got like Justin Jefferson, Jamar Chase, Cooper Cup. Even I feel like people are more likely to remember Amari Cooper than Brandin Cooks. Just he's a he's a really underrated player that continuously puts up good numbers wherever he might be. And I think that any team that he goes to really benefits offensively from that. And um, yeah, but like you were saying again, like there's a lot of changes within the Cowboys offense. And so, they probably will pick up another running back, whether it be post like after the draft, just picking up a free agency guy or, getting a running back in the draft with just especially how loaded of a class it is this time.
I don't know if you saw the news on Kareem Hunt, but there's speculation out there that he's available for 1 year, $4 million. And I mean, okay, we got to take this with a grain of salt because, like in April, especially before the draft, there's a lot of rumors that fly.
Hmm.
Like 80% of them are not true. They're just like meant
Yeah.
to speed up the market for those players or like move them up the draft boards or down the draft boards so one team can get the value off of that. But
Hmm.
I would love Kareem Hunt on the Cowboys system
Hmm.
because he can do everything that Zeke can do. And what Tony Pollard could offer. He is still a reliable receiver out of the backfield. And people forget about that with Kareem Hunt. I think the report came out that he lost speed or something. And I'm just like, that's not what the running back position is all about.
Hmm.
It's the speed is not everything. You have to know how to use your speed, how to change direction, how to understand leverage,
Hmm.
how to use the toolboxes you have as far as technical understanding. That's important. And Kareem Hunt has that. So he's going for 4 million. That's a low cost signing for the
Hmm.
Cowboys. I think that's
Yeah.
a great insurance policy. But yeah, I like what you said.
Mhm.
Do you think Brandon Cooks is a number one receiver, like a primary receiver, or do you see him as a number two?
Um, I do think that he can perform at like a wide receiver one type level for his teams, but obviously with like the Cowboys, he doesn't need to fulfill that role. I mean, just the receivers on that team are kind of just stacked in general. But so I think he's really good at just fitting where he needs to be. And obviously, like you said, Dak Prescott can't support multiple, like wide receiver, like one type players. And so I think he'll do just fine in whatever role I guess they need him in on the offense.
That's interesting. I don't see him that way. I think he's more like an Adam Thielen type receiver. I don't know if it's
Hmm.
my own bias on his production, but that's where I'm at with him. That's why I think it's such a good fit on the Cowboys because he
Hmm.
doesn't need to be that number one
Hmm.
guy. That's clearly CD Lamb.
Hmm.
I've always been saying I think CD Lamb's been the best receiver on that team ever since he's been drafted.
Hmm.
And I think his presence will help Brandon Cooks to get those wide receiver two, wide receiver one numbers that people look to in fantasy.
Hmm.
So I don't think that will change. I think it'll be interesting to see what happens if he's asked to be the primary receiver.
Hmm.
Can he win against the Jalen Ramseys, AJ Terrells of the world? I
Hmm.
think that'd be interesting to see.
Yeah.
Um, how do you think this affects the Texans side? Now we know they may be looking for a young quarterback. They just traded away a receiver
Hmm.
for that quarterback. Hint, hint. I wonder which other teams could have done that.
Yeah.
But how do you think that affects their team's direction?
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if the Texans, go full offense, with the draft and just try to load up everything for whoever they pick and bring in as quarterback for this upcoming season. Obviously they got two, high grade first round picks coming up in this draft, and then a bunch more in like the next couple rounds afterwards. Isn't that right?
Yes. I know the first round at least they're picking second and they're picking 12.
Yeah.
Thank you, Lovey Smith. Yeah. So I would look to. I think they could still go receiver with a 12 pick. I think Jackson Smith Najibba will be a good fit at 12 for them if he falls.
Mhm.
Pretty sure he'll be available. Considering they have Nico
Mhm.
Collins already and John
Yeah.
Mechie. So you have your vertical threat and then your speed threat. They
Mhm.
can do a lot of other stuff. I'm oversimplifying this here, but
Yeah.
sticking JSN in the slot, I think will be a great fit for whichever rookie quarterback is going to come in. I anticipate they'll go Bryce Young or CJ Stroud, whoever falls to them.
Yeah. Yeah. Like a lot of mock drafts, have Bryce Young and JSN going to the Texans. I feel like the only other team that could potentially, jump JSN before the Texans would be the Falcons, just kind of continuously loading up on receiver for whatever they plan for their offense next season. Just because right now it's just, you have Drake London. I forget the name of the number 2, like Zacchaeus, I think. He was
Oh,
technically,
Zacchaeus.
yeah,
All we need
Zacchaeus.
is Zacchaeus. Yeah.
Yeah, so he was kind of their number 2 technical receiver, and obviously you have Kyle Pitts coming back, and hopefully he has kind of a rebound year this year. But that's why I think the Falcons might be the one team to jump the gun on JSN and draft him ahead. But I do think that JSN is a pretty good shot for the Texans.
Don't forget, not trying to be a homie here again. He did go to Ohio State. Justin Fields has thrown to him before. So
Mhm.
I wouldn't be surprised if Justin Fields lobbies for him and the Bears are sitting at 9 and they're like, okay, we do have offensive tackle. We
Mhm.
do have defensive line as a need, but the draft is deep enough where we can go and get that later. And let's just go get another good receiver,
Mhm.
Jason, while Justin Fields is on a rookie contract. I think that's still up in the air on who they're
Mhm.
going with number 9. So that'd be the other team I would have.
Mhm. Yeah, I guess I could see that as well. Just kind of hard to invest that, especially when you just got a receiver too with technical draft capital through a trade. But yeah, I see that
Yeah,
point
it's
though.
interesting. Yeah, it's interesting. And what we're planning to do on the podcast is next week, um, we might do one of our first mock drafts live on the pod. So what we plan to do is we'll plan to alternate picks and then or something of that sort. So we'll get our breakdowns of like where we're going in each round, each pick, what our philosophy is, and how that would affect the rest of the draft board as we go along. Um, Moving on though, some recent news, pretty exciting. Maybe some indications. OBJ, he signed with
Mhm.
the Ravens. I believe the deal's for 15 million a year. Could go up to 18 million a year if he
Yeah.
meets incentives. So what do you think this move means for the team?
Um, I think obviously it's a good move. I don't know if like OBJ can play up to his like, obviously prime level that he was when he was obviously first entering in the league, but I do think this is, helping trying to lobby Lamar Jackson to stay and continue to play in or play for the Ravens. Especially just because, he had and Mark Andrews, who is obviously one of the best tight ends in the league right now. Rashad Bateman, who did play really well at the start of the season, kind of had that injury bug. And Devin Duvernay as well, some of that injury bug hit him too. And so just kind of loading up at that receiver position and just making sure that Lamar has guys to throw to, I think is a super good move. And hopefully it's an indicator that the Ravens are trying to more so invest in Lamar Jackson.
Yeah, I have a feeling this is a move planning to keep Lamar, whether it's on the franchise tag or just gain leverage. So if it's not like up to Lamar's standard, then it's like slightly under in terms of what the deal will look like. I love this move for the Ravens
Mhm.
because number one, their new offensive coordinator, Todd Monken, can adapt to any sort of play style. But for Lamar, what people have been criticizing him for, not me personally, because I think he's a good passer. He just hasn't had the foundation and the structure to do that. He showed it at Louisville for sure. Um, but Todd Monken will implement the passing concept he needs. It's just a matter of we need more personnel for the Ravens, and we need more that can stay healthy. I believe they got rid of their strength and conditioning coach from
Mhm.
last year. He kind of takes the fallout and the blame for how the injuries have occurred as a result of like strengthening their exercise, their techniques that necessarily weren't working for the players. So
Mhm.
you hope to see an improvement on the longevity throughout the season. and like some of the soft tissue injuries that have occurred to a large portion of their 22 players in the starting lineup. So hope that changes. But back to the offense, I think this is really good for Rashad Bateman. I think this is the help he needs. He does have Mark Andrews, but Mark Andrews is best when he's in the middle of the field making plays, or like he's getting schemed open off play action or screens. I think he's his best from that perspective and in the red zone.
Mhm.
When they're at their own 20 or their own 30, like Rashad Bateman needs some help. He's a really good route runner.
Mhm.
But when people start shifting coverage to his side, I think that's when he can get frustrated a lot of times, and then that offense kind of stalls out because they're
Mhm.
like, okay, Rashad's teamed out. They're rolling their coverage to Mark Andrews as well. How are we going to navigate this system? So I think the addition of Beckham increases that space. It's kind of like what we were talking about last week with Darnell Mooney and Chase Claypool, and then adding DJ Moore. It has that same effect.
Mhm.
So while it's not while it's not like Jamar Chase, T. Higgins, it's not Tyreek Hill, it's not Waddle,
Mhm.
like those combinations. I think the Bateman OBJ combination is a really good one for the Ravens.
Mhm.
I think that's gonna help Lamar like make strides in his passing game development. He's still a really good passer, but this season people are gonna see that, ooh,
Mhm.
gosh, if he just added talent, look at what this guy can do.
Yeah.
And I think I think Lamar's in for a rebound season because of that.
Yeah. And then additionally, this move just gives the Ravens kind of just more options within the draft as well. Obviously, if they want to invest their first round pick, offense or defense, but it kind of takes them out of that group of, do we need to draft a receiver this coming draft? At least with high draft capital, and kind of scares, I guess, other teams into thinking we might have to draft a certain player now, just because we know that the Ravens are no longer in the market for a future potential wide receiver one. Yeah. But kind of just moving on to more, I guess, trade related things. Obviously, Jeff Okudah was just traded today to the Falcons for a 5th round pick. I guess, what is your thoughts on that one?
Yeah, more news we have to talk about. I probably should check my phone just in case we miss any NFL news updates that come on, because I know last week we were hyping up Foster Moreau so much. Then we found out he was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma. So then we feel for the guy. We wish him all the best and luck. He heals up quickly. It was just bad timing as far as news and discussion. But in this case, I think it's a good move for the Falcons, obviously. Um, for the Lions, it's an interesting take. I don't think this is a loss. I think they're giving an indication of what they're going to do in the draft. Um, but I think when you look at their signings with Mosley, Cam Sutton, and then a CJ Gardner Johnson, I think they're really showing they want to win now. And they the real problem with Okudah was he just didn't stay healthy.
Mm-hmm.
I think when you look at him and his talent, he did a really nice job against Justin Jefferson and those level type of receivers. When he's healthy, not coming off of injuries, not playing one game, like he has great technique. He has he has patience on the line of scrimmage when receivers are getting into their move. He doesn't commit right away, and he always gains leverage back when he loses it. So that's what you look for in a quality cornerback. He was really good at Ohio State, and when he was healthy in the NFL, he was good. So
Mm-hmm.
I don't think it's a move saying, "Oh, he sucked."
Mm-hmm.
So I think for the Falcons, having that number 2 guy across of AJ Terrell,
Mm-hmm.
that fills that answer. The question with Jeff Okudah is he going to stay healthy enough to indicate that? And
Mm-hmm.
I think what they're building in Atlanta is really good. I don't agree with their philosophy on the offense side as far as quarterback position goes, but that's a different story. For their defense, it's been very impressive what they've
Mm-hmm.
done. With the Lions, I think what is signaling is they might go quarterback with their 6th overall pick. That's
Mm-hmm.
still on the play because there are a lot of good quarterbacks in this draft. I think 3
Mm-hmm.
might go in the top 15, to be honest. You have Christian Gonzalez, you have
Mm-hmm.
sorry, I'm stumbling over here. The quarter from Penn State, Joey Porter Jr. And
Mm-hmm.
then you also have hometown hero from University of Illinois, Devon Witherspoon.
Yeah.
So they could pick any of those players and have them develop and
Mhm.
sit behind Sutton, CJ Gardner Johnson, and Mosley.
Yeah.
And it wouldn't be that bad of a look. And they
Mhm.
have that fifth round pick to use.
Mhm.
So I don't think this is a loss for the Lions. I think it's a win-win trade in total.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think this draft is pretty, well, I guess balanced with that cornerback talent. And so even if you miss on your first couple of guys, you even have guys like Kelly Ringo, that you could take kind of later in the first round pick. And it just, yeah, I really like this move from both sides. Obviously, it would have been cool, I guess, to see the Lions get a little bit more draft capital, especially with kind of Okudah's trajectory if he could stay healthy. But at the same time, I think the Lions are just shopping him and trying to get as much or whatever they could from other teams trying to make him move, especially just with how much they loaded up this offseason with free agent signings. Yeah. Just kind of the next topic, kind of switching back to the offensive side of the offensive side of the field. But do we think that Trey Lance is going to break out this upcoming season, or are they going to go quarterback? Are they going to stick? It's kind of a lot of things are up in the air with the 49ers quarterback room.
I'm just laughing over here because I know why this question's coming up.
Mm.
Did you see the Twitter video with him and Patrick Mahomes working out?
Yeah, I saw that.
What do you think on that one throw? Think it's happening?
Um, I think those throws are like, obviously it's good that he can make those throws, but like showing off those throws are kind of just whatever, it's doesn't really mean too much to me, at least when I see
What do you
people.
mean? It was a perfect spiral. He threw it to the right guy. He's working out with Patrick Mahomes. What's wrong with that?
Mhm. It's just nice throws by themselves aren't too much of my things.
No, I'm the same way too. Like on you could probably tell from the podcast, but you don't really get impressed by those like pro day throws or like the throws where they're just like working out just to work out the rock combinations without any defense because they're not realistic. And I think with Trey Lance, I always had a positive mindset on him. I thought he was the third best quarterback coming out of the draft behind Trevor Lawrence and Justin Fields. So I still have high hopes for him, like being a really good quarterback. So I don't think it's going to be a breakout season. I think it's the same situation with Jeff Okudah. He was just hurt.
Mhm.
And from that first game, like he's going to have growing pains where he's still developing as a passer because he's had limited game experiences from North Dakota State. And then
Mhm.
the one season when they gave him the keys, the car, he got hurt from the first game. So
Mhm.
it's it's tough for him that he has to like that Brock Purdy took his job essentially,
Mhm.
and he's going to be battling it out with Sam Darnold just to
Mhm.
prove that he's a competent QB. But I think his talent ceiling is higher than that. So um, you can't make that assumption based on one throw. I I think the one thing you could say is his mechanics were good. Like in an
Mhm.
ideal situation, his mechanics are good, and that's all you can ask for. So
Yeah.
now the challenge is, does he trust his balance? Does he trust his footwork? Does he trust rolling out of the pocket, making throws against his body
Mhm.
on live defenders when they come in? So until we see him in preseason action,
Mhm.
then until we see him like integrate what he learns from the system to what he sees post snap and having to make those adjustments,
Mhm.
um, we can't say that Trey Lance has arrived yet. But
Yeah.
it was good to see.
Uh-huh. Yeah, and I think obviously his situation is really tricky just because, if he moves on from the 49ers, what does that kind of say about the type of player that he is, especially with the 49ers just being known as, a very quarterback friendly offense. And if he can't, be successful with that type of team, especially with his draft capital and his potential, then what are other teams going to think about? Well, we don't have that same type of quarterback friendly offense. Can he really fit with us? Or and then going back to the 49ers, like when he was playing that first short little while, when I think, yeah, when he first was playing, he wasn't really having too many opportunities to, air the ball out, throw it like the quarterback I think he wants to be. And there's a lot of more short to intermediate plays with a lot of guess, designated rushing plays involved. And you kind of see that I see that as a concern, especially when Brock Purdy comes in and all of a sudden they're able to air the ball out all of a sudden. And it's kind of almost like there's two different offensive coordinators when Trey Lance was playing for that short while and when Brock Purdy was playing quarterback for that team.
I don't want to say that because I almost feel like this is the Tyrod Taylor and Justin Herbert situation where like Tyrod was playing great. He was playing confident for that team until he had the unfortunate situation with the team doctor. And there's a different reason why, but I think that his first game was like actually against the Bears. And then that environment was rain soaked and extremely muddy. So I think in those kind of conditions, you can't really expect the receivers to have the footing to run the complete route tree and the quarterback to have that timing with a wet ball and muddy ball like that throughout a whole game. So I think that played a role in what the play calling was going to be in that game. And versus when Brock Purdy, like some of the games he's playing in the stadiums because playing against the Rams, he's playing against like other teams in this division where the weather is pretty nice throughout the year. So that does play a little bit of a role in like how the plays are called. So I think it's still a small sample size, but you're still partially right because there is a little bit of the Shanahan system he still has to learn. We could kind of get that from how he executed some of the plays. So it's more of a patience thing. When in doubt with young players, exercise patience.
Yeah. And I'd like to really see him succeed. I do think he has, good potential. He's shown that he has
Me too.
Good accuracy, he has a good arm. He has pretty solid mobility. That's kind of, the current, I guess, meta of NFL quarterbacks coming into the league where those are kind of the traits you want with a lot of these guys. And he seems like a good dude, doesn't seem like there's other players on his team or other teams that kind of talk negatively about him, minus maybe his playing ability, but even still, I think he has a lot of potential. And hopefully, whether it be the 49ers or somewhere else, he has a legitimate shot to be a successful quarterback somewhere.
This is not a Mitchell Trubisky situation. The 49ers traded up and they gave up a lot of assets to go and get Trey Lance, but this is by no means Mitchell Trubisky. Like the talent level is there physically, where you could see how he can be a great QB. Now it's just up to, is he going to develop into that and is he going to execute to that? So this is still like a work in progress. We don't have the answers. We'll have to wait and see the season and see what he puts on tape.
Yep. Yeah. And so I guess just moving on to the next topic, decided we want to talk a little bit about the draft. Obviously, still a whiles away, but see pro days happen, discussions about players happen with like interviews and whatnot. And so are there any kind of players that, surprised you, maybe kind of let you down in the past a little bit, but is anything like that for you?
Yeah, I'll be curious to see what your running back is. I know, me, I'm a Zach Evans guy all the way. And Tajay Spears. Both of those players, I think they're going to be top end producers at year's end, like starter level producers. In my opinion, that's how I predict the season will turn out for their prospects. So I wanted to pick a player that I've been studying a little bit, and I never understood why he wasn't at the top of draft boards compared to like Jamar Gibbs and obviously Bijan Robinson. But I can see him playing in the starting level role in the NFL. And that's Kendre Miller out of TCU. Zach Evans' former teammate. I think he definitely has some work to do on like the size to get more physical nature, but at the same time, there's plays where I've seen him. There's like one touchdown run where I've seen him like drag defenders and a defensive tackle into the end zone, and I'm like whoa, because you watch Kendrick Miller, he's not Eddie Lacy, he's not like AJ Dillon, he's not built like that. He's a smooth running back, and you see that on tape. So when you see that, you're like, wow. And then I think it was against Oklahoma. But he's like turning around safeties and quarterbacks with his elusiveness. And every single run you see from his highlights, he's pulling away safeties and quarterbacks. When you see that, then you know the speed is there.
Yeah.
And I think with Kendrick Miller, if you see that long speed and you see him being able to be elusive enough to shake in space, then you think, okay, as long as we put him in the gap scheme or zone scheme, you think he could succeed either way.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm really excited to see what he can do. I think my one knock against him is going to be the size aspect because I
Mm-hmm.
think teams are going to limit his role
Mm-hmm.
coming out because of that, because they don't think he can do it. I think he can. I think
Mm-hmm.
he can at least. I think he at least has the skills that Christian McCaffrey did inside the red zone now. I like how to navigate when you don't have the size to do it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And recently, actually, I looked at this kind of, I guess, running back analysis on hit rates of running backs and kind of just looking at their size. And I think I don't remember the thing exactly, but it was something along the lines of like running backs that weigh or that have like an BMI over 29, and I think it was like weighed 205 or something like that, or more. At least from a fantasy perspective, were the ones that were the one like playing as those top 10 or like, running back ones in fantasy. And outside of that, there's only been like 2 or 3 in the past like 10, 20 years that have had those running back one season, at least back to back. It was, again, I don't remember the numbers exactly, but it was something crazy like that. And I was really surprised. And because I know there's a lot of talks about, oh man, what's his name? His last name's like, I don't know how to pronounce it. Achane.
Oh, Devin Achane from
Yeah, yeah,
Texas A&M.
yeah, him.
I
Because
think it's
like,
Achane. I think it's Achane. Yeah,
yeah, I don't remember how to pronounce his name, but I
yeah,
remember a lot of people are typing him up, but then there was like, obviously the concerns that of his size and how he doesn't fit like that standard that one like that one guy that was doing the analysis on those running backs. And while obviously fantasy relevance doesn't 100% necessarily mean that they're like those are the only guys you should be targeting for your offenses, just because obviously there are players that are more, I guess, gadgety or more, running back by committees that do follow that. So like Kendre Miller, he might not be, that 12, 1,300 yard rusher with 10 plus touchdowns each year, but he could fit under, a specific offensive scheme where he can be really successful, and he could potentially, be those outliers and um, put up phenomenal numbers too. But I just thought that was kind of an interesting tidbit that I learned recently about kind of just running back hit rates in the NFL.
No, I didn't know that. I didn't know you had to have like a certain BMI to have like a really good like hit rate in the NFL. That's an interesting correlation. I'd
Yeah,
have to look into that because that's the
yeah,
first
I'll
time
try
I'm
to
hearing
find
that.
that one thing that I read and send it to you some other time. But
Yeah,
yeah.
no, please do. I think back to your 1,200 yard rusher. I think that's, especially in this NFL, that's becoming less and less common.
Mhm.
I think like the Jonathan Taylors, the Austin Eckler's, Derrick Henrys, like they are getting farther and fewer.
Mhm.
And let me not forget Josh Jacobs. I think Bijan is one of those guys
Mhm.
from this class that
Mhm.
is going to be that 1,200 yard rusher. But I think all these guys that are showing out, I don't think they'll get the carries to reach that goal.
Mhm.
I think it'll be a mixture of running and passing, but
Mhm.
their efficiency will be through the roof, and that's what you're going to really
Yeah.
for the
Mhm.
highlights.
Yeah. And another running back I just personally like. I mean, a lot of other people are talking about him too, but obviously Zach Charbonnet, he's kind of fits into that, I
Oh, the
guess.
kid out of UCLA. Yeah,
Yeah, I think he
I like
has
him.
potential to be, a really great running back. See Bijan's the number one running back, but I've seen talks about how people would potentially put Zach ahead of Jameer just based off draft capital that is invested into those guys. And I kind of see their perspective on that. And, it's something that I'm really invested in and kind of just wondering how the running backs after Bijan end up getting selected throughout this draft.
Yeah, I think it'll be based on philosophy, like you mentioned. I think I'm not surprised by that because I wasn't high on Gibbs
Mhm.
either when I was looking at running backs. I was like, oh, Bijan's really good. Tajay Spears is really good. Deuce Vaughn has some nice plays. Zach Evans I really love,
Mhm.
but it was really Bijan, Zach Evans, and Tajay Spears for me. I come around on Gibbs when I've seen him. I think he went on a show and said like he's a mix between Christian McCaffrey and Jamal Charles.
Mhm.
I don't really see that from him.
Mhm.
I don't not that high extremes, but he's a really good receiving back.
Mhm.
But the thing with Zach Charbonnet is he's a really great power back.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you watch his game, and so they have completely different styles
Mm-hmm.
and how they're going to be used right out the gate. But I don't think Charbonnet is a bad receiving back.
Yeah.
I think he can still do it. I think if teams are going to get him, they're like, okay, we need somebody to handle the in between the tackles part of the game,
Mm-hmm.
and we rather pick Charbonnet over Jameer Gibbs. That's it.
Mm-hmm.
Jameer
Yeah.
Gibbs is kind of that like scat back plus.
Mm-hmm.
Like he can do stuff like Kamara. He doesn't have the contact balance of Kamara.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's you're still gonna get a really good backs out of both those players,
Mm-hmm.
but their ceiling is not gonna be as high as what we talked about.
Mm-hmm.
Charbonnet could because there's always room to grow with the technical refinement of caching and receiving,
Mm-hmm.
but we'll see. I like that pick.
Yeah. Yeah. But yeah, and I think that this running back class in just general is one of those, like I forget that class year, but it's the one that even though Eckler was undrafted, I think that was his class that had like a bunch of running backs that hit. I think it was like him, Joe Mixon was part of that.
I remember that. I think that's 2018, wasn't that?
2018. Oh, here.
Austin Eckler draft class.
Let's see.
Yeah, 2018 draft. Yeah.
Yeah, the 2018 where they just like, yeah, a lot of good players. He had Saquon. I mean, Ronald Jones isn't really relevant now, but he had a year that was good. But yeah, you have Nick Chubb, Sony Michel, who's halfway decent. Let's see, Rashad Penny. Obviously, he hasn't been as healthy as we'd like him to be. But then, yeah, you just have a lot of running
He's been
backs
good
in
when
that.
he's been healthy.
Yeah. His efficiency when he's been healthy is phenomenal. But again, it's a when he's been healthy kind of guy.
I think that's why I think it's such a great fit for the Eagles. I
Mm-hmm.
think they still have to. I'm still a believer in Trey Sermon.
Mm-hmm.
So I think he's a back that the Eagles haven't used yet.
Mm-hmm.
So I have high prospects for him, and then they also have Kennedy Brooks like buried deep in that depth chart. So there are two backs like I would look out for if Penny gets hurt.
Mm-hmm.
But
Yeah.
yeah,
And like
yeah, that
I
was a really
inherit,
deep
yeah.
draft class.
Yeah, but I inherently also wouldn't be surprised if Eagles went Bijan Robinson. Obviously, I'm not a huge fan of taking running backs super high, but then you look at, the, I guess, prestige of his kind of running back nature, and you look at other running backs in the past that have also been drafted pretty high based off just, being undoubtedly like the best running back of all time, for like the past couple of years, one of those. And so just one of my, I guess, hot but not hot takes for Bijan Robinson's draft stock.
There's a lot of good running backs. Yeah. There's at least like three I really like that can be day one starters.
Yeah.
So I and then there's like a ton that just need time to develop and that they're productive starters right out the gate. Like I think Deuce Vaughn's a really good player, but if you look at his size, he's like 5'11". There's not many teams that would be interested in what he could do based on that size. So.
Yeah. And it's kind of moving on to like the next part of the draft. It's just like any players that you're fading in particular, or you may not be super hyped about.
You said fading? Yeah, I have two. I don't understand why Will Levis is being mocked so high. I really don't, because when I look at his film, he has a really strong arm, which I know a lot of NFL teams will gravitate toward. But when you're picking him in the top 10, it comes with the expectation that he's going to start somewhere down the line that every season. And I just don't think he's ready for that yet. I think when you look at some like the accuracy, like and leverage, I guess the leverage type throws he puts out there, they're not very accurate at all. I've seen plenty of tape where he's like overthrowing on the sideline for no reason when the defender has leverage. When he'll throw to the leverage of the quarterback to help out the receiver. And then sometimes like when he's throwing to the receiver on the post route, he won't throw like leading the receiver to the opposite end zone, which I'm just so confused about. Like he'll throw on the opposite side of the post. So if you're coming from like the right sideline to the left on a post route, you want to throw leading to the left. He doesn't. He throws it like extending like it's a street route or towards the right side. So when I see touch throws like that, I'm just like, I really wouldn't pick him in the top of the first round. I could see him like the bottom of the first round or even in the second round. Because at least at that time, like teams know, okay, we need to build a plan with this type of quarterback
Mhm.
so that he can learn how to get more touch with his arm. He's a very mobile QB. He has a strong arm. Those two are good. But in the NFL, like everyone's really good. Everyone has the highest end athletic traits. It's your skill that's gonna separate you. And right now, I think he needs more work on that.
Mhm.
And then the other player that comes to mind is Quentin Johnson. Um, I know a lot of people have him like on the same plane as JSN in terms of mock draft, and I think that's more attributed to the fact that TCU went all the way to the national championship game.
Mhm.
And people don't forget, like when it came time to him to play against the Michigan defenses and the Georgia defenses, I didn't see him separate as well when he had
Mhm.
press coverage, and he had to really utilize techniques and win with leverage, catch like in contested catch situations with the right technique. I didn't really see that,
Mhm.
and I'm starting to think that he needs to be he needs to be in the flanker position, which is basically not lined up like right on the line of scrimmage, but like a little bit away, like 1 or 2 yards away,
Mhm.
in order to like give him that leeway to to run his routes. And I think with that, he it's gonna limit him.
Mhm.
Teams are only gonna put him at that one position to give him the round combination, and that's gonna be a huge tell for defenses.
Mhm.
So I think with both those players, there are limitations to their game that are large enough that are gonna handicap teams.
Yeah.
So those are the two prospects I'd be aware of.
Yeah. I honestly agree with both of those right now. Yeah, I think Will Levis, he's getting kind of that Zach Wilson treatment of, he can make a couple big throws, it looks fancy, I guess. It's like, a fancy new toy, but then um you look at the tape, it's not quite as good. And then the same with Johnston. Um he he has good yards after the catch. He gets the ball, he can make plays after that. But the issue is, again, can he beat NFL caliber cornerbacks? And I just don't think that's something that is quite his strength right now. Obviously, development, yada, yada, yada can happen. But um, looking at the prospects right now, I don't think they're good as they're hyped to be. And then just kind of adding two onto that. I think Jordan Addison is another player I'm not the hugest fan of. I wouldn't be surprised if
Really?
it, yeah.
Wow.
Um, yeah, I just don't think he has a good, I guess, round one wide receiver type build that you're looking for.
Okay.
Like obviously, I think his ceiling might be Brandin Cooks, who we just talked about earlier. But again, it's like if that's in my head, if that's his ceiling, it's like, is that really a player I'm willing to invest first round draft capital into? Where, there might be another player that just might be best player available. There's other receivers in the class that I do like over him. Um, and then, yeah, I don't know. It's overall, I think the receivers are seem to be really hit or like boom or bust in my opinion, just with Quentin Johnston, Jordan Addison. I think Josh Downs, I think he can be phenomenal, but at the same time, it's like he also could be just a huge bust. I feel like more so
You're
than the
pulling a
past.
180 on me. Just the last episode, you're so high on Josh Down. Like that was one
Yeah,
player
and
you're really high on.
yeah, I mean, I do love Josh Downs. I'd love it if I could get him on my dynasty fantasy football team. But at the same time, it's just like I feel like this class, at least with wide receivers, is full of a lot of boom or bust prospects, and so it's it's really scary. Outside of I think JSN, obviously, I think is the safest wide receiver to go within this class. But I think the next two that everyone talks about is Jordan Addison, Quentin Johnston. Um, Kind of scary for me to at least check them out as receivers.
Let me give you two that I think that are gonna be that I think are better than both those players right now. But at the same time, I liked Addison's game.
Mhm.
I don't think he's like on the lead tier of the draft process coming
Mhm,
up, but I think he's really good in like a good offense that knows how to use it.
mhm,
For just for speculation, I mean,
mhm,
not for speculation, just for like my perspective, I really like receivers that have good route running skills
mhm,
and then know what to do with their hands at the catch point.
mhm,
So when I see those two things, then I'm like, okay, I think he could be a really good receiver in the NFL. And if I was GM or if I was deciding which players I want on my fantasy team, those are the types of receivers I would want.
mhm.
And
Yeah.
Addison's one of them. Like,
Mhm,
I think if you went to a situation like the Chargers, who are picking like 22nd or 27th the first
mhm.
round,
Yeah.
that would be really good because he's on the same team as Keenan Allen, who's
Mhm,
also a really good route runner. That would be a great learning environment for him to learn
mhm,
how to use his route running to win in the NFL despite his size.
mhm.
If he goes somewhere like the Eagles, God forbid, if he goes somewhere like the Eagles, add another receiver to that environment. I think that's a good fit because a lot of people had those issues with Devontae Smith. I
Mhm,
did too. I didn't think Devontae Smith was the number one receiver coming out of the class, which is why I
mhm,
like lowered him down the board.
mhm,
But I think with Jordan Addison, it depends on it's really about team fit. I
mhm.
think if he's asked to be a number one wide receiver out of the gate, then you're right. Then I could see that. But nowadays, when I look across the league, how many teams are in that situation that need a number one wide receiver? And
Mhm.
it's not that many. So I'm thinking if he starts out as a number two at the NFL level, he's still a really good wide receiver. So I don't agree with your take there, but I see the reasoning of it.
Mhm. Yeah. And then just kind of another receiver to talk about, but what do you think about Kayshon Boutte?
I like him. I like
You
him.
do?
I don't think he's as good as the two receivers I'll put on the board. He has some issues at the catch point,
Mhm,
but he's a good physical receiver that could be a number one wide receiver if he fixes his hand positioning on certain throws,
mhm,
and that he gives his quarterback like
mhm,
enough room between the sideline and his out breaking routes. I think he could be really good on the NFL level.
mhm. Yeah. Well, there's been a lot of talk about kind of people fading him after like his combine performance and kind of just questioning like his
Squash that. Squash that right now.
mentality.
Don't okay. If somebody's like I think the one thing in the combine that I would pay attention to is the three cone drill because that looks at your agility. Because that's more like that's something where you can attribute to like processing in the field,
Mhm,
and you're saying, okay, can you be agile enough to avoid a defender after he first catches the ball? That's
mhm.
where like the three cone can play a role. Like the other
Yeah.
stuff, like the speed, the vertical jump, like just those other drills, like the catching, like on the move
Mhm,
and stuff like that. Like that's I don't see if there's high level value because you're not doing this on a defender. You're not having any obstacles in the way
mhm.
of that.
Yeah.
So I don't really buy those indicator markers. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't really put much stock into the combine.
Yeah. Well, I mean, the main issue a lot of people had was like it just seemed like he wasn't necessarily trying at the combine for one, and number two, he didn't do a lot of second attempts when he had the opportunity to like kind of show that these people kind of saw that he didn't take that opportunity to go for a better score on his combine metrics and kind of saw that as does he really like have that I guess dog in him, but um
Trying to pull a Philly reference in there. I see. Yeah.
yeah, and so
No.
obviously that's kind of I
Yeah.
mean, that's what a lot of people were concerned about. Like, obviously, like I think no one really cares about what he ran or how high his vertical was at the combine. It was just more so of a lack of, I guess, motivation. It seemed from his part to continue to do the testing and kind of just putting on the best that he could show.
Yeah. I mean, unless there's a situation where like he's like arguing with the coaches or he's just like unmotivated on the field or something like that, then that's something I would probably pay attention to. That probably lower him on my draft board. But as
Hmm.
far as I know, I haven't heard of any situations like that. So I mean, like if he's doing that at the combine, like
Hmm.
I don't really blame him because
Hmm.
like how much is the combine gonna translate to on the field performance? Like
Hmm.
play speed is different from running in a straight line
Yeah.
for 40 yards. Like how often are you gonna do that in the NFL unless like you're a kick returner that can separate from
Hmm.
the entire coverage? Not often,
Yeah.
right?
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't blame him either. And some at the same time, some prospects don't even run at the combine and they choose
Yeah.
to run all their activities at the pro day itself.
Hmm.
So
Yeah.
I don't really put much stock into that on my draft board.
Uh-huh.
But the two receivers I am excited to talk about.
Hmm.
One is Cedric Tillman
Yeah.
out of Tennessee. I love this dude. A lot of people are talking about Jalen Hyatt, and I get that. But if you watch Jalen Hyatt, a lot of his catches, he's completely wide open. The question I keep asking myself is, how often is that going to happen in the NFL? It could. He could be the next Tyreek Hill. Could end up on the Chiefs for all I know, and that's going to happen all the time.
Hmm.
But until that happens, I'm not too sure on Hyatt. Tobin,
Hmm.
however, I'm really impressed with because I just see a lot of hospital balls being thrown to him, and he still ends up with the ball.
Hmm.
He's like Mike Williams when it comes to like end zone catches,
Hmm.
and that's a really good look for me. And I
Yeah.
think he could be even better than Mike Williams because he's got that route running in him. He's
Hmm.
got that little bit of shiftiness. Like
Hmm.
you could see, he's got a really good juke move if you watch
Hmm.
him against ranked teams like Texas,
Hmm.
like at Oklahoma. Like you're just like, wow. Like he's stiff arming dudes. He's like juking in a different direction. Like after the catch, he's not just like a stationary target that's just gonna come up and high point the ball. He's got that little bit of AJ Brown into him.
Hmm.
I don't think he's AJ Brown because I don't think he's as athletically agile as AJ Brown, but I'm really excited about his prospects. And look at just a couple team fits for him that I'm really excited about that I've seen floating around is I've heard the Vikings, the Tennessee Titans, and then the Atlanta Falcons as potential fits for him. And
Hmm.
I think if he goes to either of those three spots, especially Minnesota, because he's opposite of Justin Jefferson, I think he could really fly.
Hmm.
And then the one other guy that has a completely different game from Tillman, but who I'm also having my top five out of my wide receivers in no order is Jaden Reed out of Michigan State. When I watch his route running, I'm just super impressed. He always knows how to run the right route. He can be schemed open. He's always like he always has separation, like once he gets out of his breaks, and that's excites me so much. Like Kendrick Miller, he also has the long speed to separate. So just a combination of his route running and his speed, you really see it on the field. And I think he's proven he could be a number one wide receiver with those skills translating. And I think you'll see him in the mold of Stephon Diggs. And just a one other positive too on Jaden Reed. He he could he's a really good kick returner and punt returner. He scored plenty of touchdowns just from punt returns alone. And year one, you could put him on the field, start him as the punt returner, and that's what's gonna get him the buzz where I think like he's gonna start seeing the field. So really excited about those two players. Want to get your thoughts on what you think about them if you watch them.
Um, yeah, I haven't had like too much, I guess, wide receiver tape that I've looked at this
All good. All good.
off season. Again, I feel like overall this receiver class is obviously kind of a bit down compared to the past couple that we've gotten. Not to say that, we might get 8 superstar receivers coming out of this class, but yeah, this has been definitely kind of just a down year for, I think, the receiver class. And there's a lot of other just loaded positions, I think, in this class. That obviously we'll be really excited to see get drafted come draft time. And I mean, like we talked about earlier, the running back class is it's really similar to that 2018 class with just a bunch of talent. We got a lot of quarterbacks in this class. I feel like everyone's pretty confident about Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, but then you kind of look after that and you're like, these players could be huge superstars. These players could be the biggest bust we've ever seen in the NFL. But again, it's just a lot of depth with a lot of these positions. And then I feel like the receiver class kind of takes a step back. And so we'll kind of see what happens.
It's not if you're looking at it compared to Chase and Waddle,
Mhm.
it's not as good as Chase and Waddle in the same draft class. I don't
Yeah.
think it's even close. I do think I don't think JSN was as good as Olave coming out, but I can easily see him being as good as Olave
Mm.
and better. Uh, but at the same time, I think there's a lot of receivers that if they fix one or two things,
Mhm.
like the Keyshawn Booty types, like if they fix one or two things, I think it could easily be one of the deepest receiving classes that
Mhm.
are starting NFL wide receivers,
Yeah.
in my opinion.
Hmm. Yeah. So again, next week we'll probably do a mock draft, kind of talk a little bit more about our draft opinions and whatnot. But just kind of one last final topic. Unless you have other things to talk about, it is kind of just there's a lot of talks about Arizona and making trades, whether it be with DeAndre Hopkins, like we mentioned last time, or just that pick that they have right now, and kind of what should they do? Will teams trade up? Are teams in a position to need to trade up?
I think they will trade it. Um, they could end up sticking and drafting a quarterback, but I look at the contract they issued out to Kyler Murray, and then the fact that he's coming out of injury, and I think the fallout of that from drafting a quarterback is going to be too much for
Mhm.
the new regime it just got there to bear and then
Mhm.
do a complete rebuild. So I don't anticipate doing it. I wouldn't rule out the possibility of them doing it, but that's like highly unlikely.
Mhm.
I think the two teams to look out for that are going to trade up are the Falcons and then the Raiders, because I
Mhm.
think the current quarterback situations they have going on are not going to elevate them to that top tier playoff contender down the line. And I know you outlined that CJ Stroud and Bryce Young are the top two quarterbacks in the draft class, but on my draft board, in my opinion, I would add Anthony Richardson to him on that because I
Mhm.
think his ceiling is higher than both, and his floor is a lot higher than people expect. I still think he's a first round pick, like as far as his floor goes, in like top 10.
Mhm.
So I think whoever picks at 3 is gonna draft one of those 3 if Anthony Richardson doesn't fall to 3.
Yeah.
I think that highly of him. So I think if anybody that's gonna pick the third overall pick, it's gonna be Las Vegas or Atlanta, and it's gonna be Richardson, if not one of Stroud and Young.
Hmm. Yeah. Obviously, my opinion on Richardson. I don't think he's a good quarterback. I don't think he was good in college in general. I think he's just he got really hyped up because of the combine, and so um me personally, I think Young and Stroud are my top two quarterbacks, and then I personally like Hendon Hooker. Probably is my number 3 quarterback. I don't think he's a first round type quarterback, but I think after those two, it's really just round 2 and beyond type quarterbacks. Yeah, but that's just my own take. So I think Arizona should just keep the pick unless some idiot team wants to take Anthony Richardson and pray that he can pan out despite just poor play in college. Like, he's like, they have the whole, oh, he's super fast and he's like that Cam Newton build, but then he doesn't really have, I mean, he has good running numbers in college, that one season in college, but it's not like, oh, wow, he was a great runner in college, that really translates when you see his metrics on like just 40s and all that kind of stuff. And so I think that going Will Anderson is the best move for the Cardinals, unless like you think some team's going to trade up for Anthony Richardson, which I certainly hope no team does, because again, I don't think he's that great of a quarterback.
Wow. No, that's a strong take. That's a strong take. I I hope he does well in the NFL. I really have high hopes for him.
Mhm.
I just look at some of the throws he had, like but the deep passing game, where he understands the leverage and it's not a guy flying wide open. It's
Mhm.
NFL type throws I see from him.
Yeah.
I think the one weakness he does have, and I think it's gonna get better with experience, is the short passing game, but it's like ring routes or like screens, where it's more of the timing plays. Where I think whichever team drafts him at 3, I do think he needs to sit a couple games. I wouldn't throw him out there right away. So your point is not like it's not totally like off
Mhm.
base. I do see the reasoning, but I think the talent level is there, and he's a really underrated QB.
Mhm.
Like for the view of like he's the first round pick that I just personally think he's going to be picked top 10. We'll see what happens. But what are we really talking about here? Like Will Anderson at 3 or like trading down? Like I think Arizona's in that prime position either way because they're going to get one of the most once in the generational defenders in the league, or they're going to get extreme value out of a team overpaying for a quarterback. I think in either case, they win. And if they pick Will Anderson at 3, the Colts are going to be like so ecstatic because then they're going to get Anthony Richardson or like whichever quarterback falls to them. So I think
Yeah.
I think in either case, like Arizona has nothing to lose here. They still have to focus on rebuilding their team. So it's just a matter of philosophy on whether they want to go with one of the best defensive prospects in the decade, which is Will Anderson, or if they want to trade down to get more assets to help build that team faster. Then, well, we'll see what happens.
Yeah. And I probably feel like this Anthony Richardson discussion will be a weekly thing just because you obviously like him and I obviously very much dislike him. I mean, I'm not opposed to it, but I think it's a fun discussion to have. And obviously it just makes me more excited for the draft to see where he goes, to see if he gets drafted too high or at where he should be. But
I'm telling you, man, I think he's gonna be a really good player. I think people are sleeping on him, even with all the hype he's getting.
Everybody's hyping him up. Like my last point about Anthony Richardson, and I'm done. But I think he's just a slightly, or not slightly, but a bit like a more athletic version of Malik Willis, and like.
But that's a good thing, right? You want that to happen.
Malik Willis is a horrible passer, though.
Okay, hold on. I don't think Malik Willis is a good quarterback. But if you're telling me he's more athletic than Malik Willis, that's good. That's good. That means he has the boundary traits of a runner. They could be here. But I think the passing between Malik Willis and Anthony Richardson are miles apart as far as aptitude. Yeah. I don't think you could compare both of those quarterbacks in terms of like technical knowledge.
Yeah.
I don't think so.
Yeah, I just think about how last draft teams were talking about how the Raiders are going to take Malik Willis in the top 10 or something like that, and then he fell to the 3rd or 4th round or wherever he was. And I think Anthony Richardson will suffer a similar fate to that. Maybe not as low, but and obviously there is hype around him, so I don't think he'll drop to the 3rd or 4th. But I still
one last thing, guys. Like, well, we could endlessly debate about Anthony Richardson here, but I think the more important story is like, especially during this month leading up to the draft, you're gonna see a lot of NFL draft rumors and NFL news like speculating on, oh, what's gonna happen. We just saw it today with Kareem Hunt, like saying, oh, no teams want him, and he's probably gonna sign a 1-year, $4 million deal or something. That could easily be a smokescreen for the Browns to sign Kareem Hunt back with slightly higher value, but it ends up being a bargain compared to what Kareem Hunt was asking for. So that could easily be applied with the draft, like what teams are going where. Like we just saw some news speculating that Carolina might go Bryce Young with the first overall pick after like a whole week that's discussing, oh, we think CJ Stroud would be a good fit for Frank Reich's system. So you're going to see tons. The big story here is you're going to see tons of news circulating around. Don't buy into all the hype. It's going to happen to drive value or to draw players on the boards. I wouldn't be surprised if like teams are off with Jalen Carter, and that's like the news article I see tomorrow morning. And then some team that pick it 13th watch Jalen Carter so bad that they pick him at that spot. So just keep an eye out for the rumors. Like 90% of them are going to be false. We don't know what's going to happen until the draft happens. We're just making our predictions based on how we value the players. So we're going to have our differences, but it's always fun to see how players fare like 3 to 5 years from now after they're drafted.
Yeah, and so hopefully this is uploaded soon, and hopefully we get back to you in a week from now instead of our long hiatus we had last time. But catch you next time with more of our own draft opinions, hopefully a mock draft. Figure out how we're going to do that still, but catch you next time.
Take it easy.